Hello, everybody. This is Hippie Hacker. I'm your lead today, or the host today for this SIG Architecture Conformance sub-project meeting. This call is governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, and if me or anybody on the call happens to cross any of those lines, please do give myself a ring or reach out to the Kubernetes community. Contrivex, I think it is. We have an agenda today that's quite full and also has a lot of unblocky bits, but I'm glad to see we have good representation here today. So I will go ahead and share my screen and we'll get down to it. Share screen and desktop one. Pardon if you see yourself for a moment. Overall, one of the first things I wanted to make sure we got through on the agenda is every month or so we go through and update our roadmap and our OKRs, which are objectives and key results. Yeah. This first link that I'll share with our, I think I can share it within the chat. Is the presentation that I'm going to go over in Markdown form, but I'm going to do the presentation in HTML, which is that second link. We've not changing much from our approach, just trying to iterate on working consistently to increase velocity. Our primary objectives were to increase new conformance stable endpoints. We'd love to get to 40. It's been a hard release, so I'm still sticking with 30. Current status is we've got 19 that are written and 4 that are on the plate as far as stuff that I feel pretty confident on. And I think we'll go through some of those PRs later. One of them is just a promote PR and one's a test that is getting some feedback and one's an issue. We have some intermittent flakes that we need to go back and revisit. There's about 17 points sitting there. Maybe we can hit those. Flakes are hard, and I just want to acknowledge that we have these in there. These tests have been written, and we're having trouble finding the flakes. And there's our 17 points here. One of the hardest things that we've been trying to debug is we're writing tests and they're not showing up, and it comes down to our audit policies on the main CI jobs are not. They're filtering out. So if I'll click on this link, just kind of give it a little bit of a walk down. Our policy actually has a section that says, do not log events because of the performance impact. That means anything we do to test events does not show up. And I think that we're going to have to pivot from trying to update our existing GCE-based conformance PR blocking jobs or release blocking jobs to the kind and probably just create a new policy or a new CI job based on that. And I just actually dropped a link that I just wrote. So I'll bring that up. This is my hack E to E that goes through and attempts to modify that approach to lay down a very generous audit policy that says log everything's metadata when you get to response complete. And then modifying our control plane when we bring it up to bring in that audit folder and update the API audit logs to include the audit policy. And I also have to do a few more updates there. But I'd love feedback on if it's been a struggle. But hopefully, if we can get this in where we actually start loading the audit logs that include events, we'll gain 7 endpoints from tests we've already written that just aren't showing up. We've had some issues with Proxy Redirect. Proxy Redirect, there's some bugs that we have found because we're writing tests, and because we're writing these tests, there's now bugs that need to get cleaned up in how we do Proxy Redirects. And it's a lower priority because it's not part of our mandate to do it. To update the API itself. So I'm hesitant to find the way forward, but Liggett noted that we need to fix some of these things. And I just wanted to let kind of an update. We have 14 points that we're unlikely to get in for 120. because we're going to have to make some changes to the API server itself. In conclusion, I still think we're going to be on target for this release, but we are having lots of flakes, policies, and redirect problems. Flakes are difficult to debug and reduce, and policies, getting the audit policy changes in effect in the CI jobs that we consume has been slow and hard. And proxy redirects bugs that we've established have also slowed our momentum down. But I'm still quite positive on the release. Some super exciting things are that we had cleared our debt. Let's go back to here. We will clear our debt all the way back to 111. I think we're going to get these 5 in here, and I'm not sure if we're getting the ones on 111 or not. Let's take a look at that here. So we've got 5 endpoints for 119, and there's a priority lifecycle test that I really want to see promoted. It's nice and clean, and it says feel free to promote. That was 7 days ago, so hopefully in 1 week, this test grid is looking super good. That we'll have a nice test to clean lots of backlog debt. And that will mean we can start focusing on these last, 1.5 and earlier through 110 sets of debt. And that would get us to 110. Our release blocking job has been difficult as well. There's some issues around how it's being interpreted by I think it's pod utils is what we came up with. So we have it running in prow.cncf.io and it's working. But if you look at the same job, change it. If I do instead of cncf.io, if we go to prow.case.io and look at the same job, it's failing. And what we've come to a little bit of research makes us feel, not sure how quickly get to that, is that it's failing because of entry points. And so that's going to require a bit of debugging. So we're not quite there yet, though I think that will come soon. SIG Network actually mentioned in their request for the test group for blocking jobs, noted and took some, even put it a screenshot, if they'd like to get some, should they be using API Snoop to do that? And probably would get this from September 12th, but it might be nice to follow back around on that. Presentation. I think I clicked on the link. Oh, here's the 2 jobs. So here's the one from CNCF and the one from Prow. So the one on case.io is failing, and it has something to do with when we wanted as root and some issues I hope to get solved soon. We engaged with SIG testing. I was actually on the call this morning and got some good feedback. Other important news, just so we know the 1.10.20 timeline, we've got code freeze in about 4 weeks, and release date is December 8th. So we need to get those tests in to get by coverage by November 12th, so we have that 2-week window to promote. And I think, the Conformance Gate is up and running, though I think we have a bug that we're fixing on that today. We are speaking at the Kubernetes performance coverage. There's a link on the schedule, and I can drop that into our chat somehow. And where is it? That's in our Zoom chat.
I was just trying to get it without video, but you know what?
And I think that is it. Any questions or feedback on the updates today? I guess that other long form version.
Hi. So first question. I know there was many PRs attempt for the audit stuff. Where does it stand now? What is the last one standing that we need to look at?
Do you mean with the audit policy updates?
Yes.
Yes.
Which
I
PR?
just was.
I believe this is a fix, but
I haven't. So it sounds like what we need to do is having the audit policy created via that ENV var is failing. And we've tried hard to figure out why. It might be easier to create a new job on kind conformance. And I think I just pasted into our chat at the beginning. Maybe I didn't. I typed that into the Slack.
Hippie, why don't we do that in our case conformance Slack channel? It might, because we're going to lose the chat here.
Sure,
we drop
that's fine. I'll drop that in. And so there's a thread in SIG testing, but I'll drop that in case conformance.
Okay. So the first problem is we are not able to inject the custom audit. That was the first problem, right? And the second problem is the pro. You said the Conformance Gate API Snoop is not working in our pro; it's working in the other pro. So those are the two problems that I heard as like really critical right now for your work.
Yes. I got onto SIG testing's call this morning, and with the help of Ben the Elder and SpiffX, we walked through what that issue might be. And I was able to generate, using the ENV vars, a proper audit policy, but debugging it is quite difficult. And rather than trying to update that existing job, because it might be performance problems, it was suggested that I create a new job, and rather than basing it on the GCI GCE job, basing it on the kind conformance job. And there is a SIG testing thread about that right now that was opened this morning, and I can share the link to that inside of our case conformance channel.
Okay, so you're going to try that. You're going to try a kind base, but with a custom audit.
That's correct.
Okay, so you don't need my help there, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Then that was just relatively new as of this morning in the last 2 hours.
Okay. Then the other one was the Conformance Gate. Do you have some hints there already?
For the Conformance Gate, let's go back to that one real quick. This is the next part of the conversation was mainly around that the kind hack here. And let's go around to the next one. With the gate, it seems like there's an issue with how that job is starting. And we had where it does work on PROW on CNCF, but it does not work on PROW on CASE. And it seems to be something to do with the audit, with the, sorry, it's called pod utils and decorators. So we're not using those decorators. When those decorators are applied, something about how it's executed. I think we just learned from Ben on the call in SIG testing that there's an issue where when we use the decorators and the entry point sidecar, the entry point, it ignores any entry point set by the container itself when we create the Docker container. So it's treated differently. So I think we did find a way forward there. And again, that was just out of this last call.
Okay, so the pod utils entry point should turn around and call your entry point explicitly as the first parameter.
It should, but we depend on a combination of the effective UID and the first parameter as an argument. And because we had coded that inside of our entry point as the first arg, it was ignored by when it's run by pod utils.
Okay. Okay, so let's do this. If you are still stuck tomorrow, then ping me back and I'll help there.
Thanks so much, Tim. It's been a journey to figure out exactly why it's not coming up.
I know every time I try to go do something, I feel like you've gone a little bit further, so I have to like catch up. And so I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just wait for the call, then we'll catch up and then we'll do.
Yeah, it was a good thing to catch up with SIG testing this morning to get to with Ben and Aaron at the same time. And that has pushed us forward a bit. I did not expect to get that help before. I was actually walking on the beach and I realized that call was coming, so I jumped on the call from my morning walk.
Okay, don't give me that information because I'm going to yell at you.
Oh, sorry.
That you were walking on the beach. I can't get out of the house here.
I look forward to us all getting together in larger public spaces as soon as we can.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Dan. To clarify the stuff that Dim's just went over, that was kind of the next point. The jobs for E do not deliver the event endpoint results, and we need those events to show up in order for us to calculate conformance correctly. It's likely we're going to create a new job based on this. I'm going to close all these many tabs so it's a little less confusing. Based on this job here, this job runs the normal test image for, I think that's the Kubernetes runtime test environment. Maybe that's what KRTE is. But they download kind, and then within that run the E2E case SH. And that's what I just wrote an updated version of and posted into the channel. So hopefully if I can create a new job based on that to override these lines, because these lines here are where they create the config that does not create audit logs inside the artifact yet. So hopefully that will allow us to be in full control of our own job and not have to get permission from outside of SIG architecture. And look for that PR later today. For our KK release blocking job we just mentioned, I think we're going to just need to debug that a bit and reach out to them. It sounds like there's an issue with the possible, and this is just from this morning, possible issue with the pod utils entry point and not calling our Docker file entry point. And finally, we'll get to some stuff beyond that, and that's the node proxy with path, test and promote, that it should give us an extra 4 points of coverage. It kind of depends on kubelet, and I'll let Stephen take over this part. Here's a bit of a write-up on it.
Okay, just a little, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Yeah, cool. If you just go down a little bit further into the actual Go test itself. Yeah, about there, thanks, Hippie. Where we're doing the URL string in my mock test so far, the end's going to config Z, and I did some checks, and of course that's relying on some stuff that's part of kubelet, and there's also metrics. So I'm trying to find what's a suitable endpoint that I could possibly hit to do to try and send something through for a node proxy that doesn't rely directly on kubelet, because of course kubelet is listed as not being allowed for conformance jobs. Otherwise, these endpoints have to be probably listed as being untestable for conformance.
Show agenda item. So I think our question is, what should we be using to test node proxy with path so that it is able to be part of conformance? Or should anything related to node proxy be relegated to not part of conformance?
Is proxy still disableable on the kubelet side? So like the 2 endpoints you mentioned can be disabled, I think. So that's one consideration. I know of people who disable proxy to nodes. It's not required for any correct operation of the system today. It's had challenges over the last couple of years, right? We do the tunneling, right? Because people don't want to allow the control plane to be able to reach out to their internal network. We've definitely vulnerabilities there. It's a pod proxy, yes. Node proxy, it's hard to imagine that you would have an implementation that didn't have this, but I could see a legitimate case for not allowing this. And it is possible via configuration to disable this.
I mean, I guess the question would be, do we want it to be part of the overall surface of Kubernetes and required as part of conformance? If it's not really that central, and people don't rely on it, then, you know, I think leaving it out of conformance might be appropriate.
Yeah, under the old criteria, right, something that was application centric, I would say clearly no. Like you can make a case that node proxy is useful for establishing that your application is going to run consistently across Kubernetes clusters, but I don't think it's a strong one. Under the broader one that we've been trying to ensure that you have a reasonable expectations both as an admin and as an end user, it's not heavily used. That's the, I mean, so let's say we kick it out and we say candidate for a future profile. Does that hurt us?
We keep track of these endpoints just in case if anybody wasn't aware. On API Snoop under Conformance Project, we have our list of ineligible endpoints, and they're here. There are 61, and we link to why it's not available for testing. That's the result of if we decide to not have it be part of conformance.
What would the reason we would put down would be? Not maybe enabled within a conformant cluster, no appropriate or not end user facing, like, well, what are some of the other justifications that are shown up in that list?
How often do we see it disabled? Like, I guess that's, we talked about this in earlier meetings around getting a consensus on how often it's deviated from the norm, and if there's more than a 20, 50 or 20% group of people who do not allow it. And if the thing would be, if we, it might, to identify things that we would want to have part of conformance or part of policies, if we go ahead and enable this and write the test and people start failing and they're like, can we move that into a policy, would let us know really clearly a signal for how many deployments do not allow node proxy.
Well, we talked about, I mean, yeah, we can get into, we may want to consider some sort of provisional status, like not just flagging things conformant, but some sort of beta conformance or something like that to say that it's part of.
I agree with that thought process.
Please don't.
In this particular case, like if we don't, like, it sounds like we don't even have necessarily a consistent endpoint to point it at. Can we create an endpoint on the node that
you can hit the node's health check? I think that would probably be more correct. The kubelet's health check.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Red easy. I think.
But that's making that part of conformance, right? I mean, theoretically, do we want to do that?
You don't have to use the kubelet to implement the kubelet. Satisfy the criteria. So yeah, any endpoint we pick, we probably have to put a pod on that node and then call the proxy endpoint. And we'd have to run it on the, actually, no, I'm sorry. Yeah.
You run something in host namespace, you hit it from this proxy. I'm not that familiar with how this proxy works.
No, it's gonna hit the kubelet. Well, no, if you change port,
Is there any
We can pass-
object we can create via the Kubelet API that is just like tags or metadata or something that
We
doesn't have
shouldn't
side
create
effects?
anything via the Kubelet API. That's expressly not part of the surface area. So
Oh, great.
I think you can pass a port. I think we could do a daemon set type of thing and verify it works. I'm kind of tempted to put this in the it's totally reasonable to go after the behavior of it. There's more than just like you need to test some of the port semantics too to truly test conformance. We do have EDE tests that cover that, so it's not as if we don't, or we should have EDE tests that cover it. Did this show up here because we don't actually have an EDE test that covers node proxy?
We do not.
So I actually would probably put it in the, let's not put it into conformance until we have an EDE test on it category. And the EDE test really does need to give it a thorough, like just like pod proxy, we've had so many bugs over the years. I'm actually now worried that anything we did could back us into a corner. So yeah, provisional status or not yet ready. I'd probably go for not yet ready, and then we need to get SIG node to get an EDE test in there. Or yeah, SIG node ultimately ends this. I did not realize we did. That's pretty terrifying actually that we don't have an EDE test for node proxy, because I know people who use it for.
Let's take a quick verify of this, right? So I'm going to go through and see, here are the endpoints that were listed there. And I think if we go down to the bottom, we'll see in the EDE, there's a query we do at the end. Is it hit by an EDE at all? And it's not. There's false on those 4. One of them is connect v1 get node proxy with path has a T, which means there is a test that hits that one. But the other 4, we do not. Yeah,
I feel like SIG node should own this, because
okay.
if we only have a single test, there might be integration tests that someone have to go reverse engineer. It feels like this is a SIG node thing to go close out versus something to do here.
Cool. We will add that as the AI to involve them in that and let them see our ticket, because we haven't written a test for this. This was just us wanting to get feedback on the approach and whether or not it was valid for conformance. Sounds like we have that status. Any other comments on node proxy with path? All right, we'll go to one of the last ones here, and that is our head and options. Somehow I didn't click on it correctly. Our head and options, there are proxy verbs that are part of our namespace, and this is the find and head. Do you want me to cover this, Stephen, or do you want to cover it?
No, you can go through it.
All right. When the HTTP methods come in over HTTP from any of our clients, that head HTTP verb is hard-coded into a GET. And that makes some of the API inaccessible as far as I can tell. Note right here on our new request, we have a verb, which is strings to lower on the request method. And that verb is the kube verb associated with the request, not the HTTP verb. We did a translation directly to lower. And then we have some special verbs, which is what we're hitting in this outlier here as our proxy verbs. And they're supposed to be able to do some really non-cruddy things because they're proxies. We have some, if we have a special verb, it's supposed to check and see if the current part of the URL has proxy in it, and then override the request verb to have it set there. Something doesn't add up for us, because when we do head, this is what we get in the log. We get a get. And what's hard for us is we don't have within the audit logs the actual operation, the Kubernetes operation. We have to rely on a combination of the the verb as stored by the audit logs and the request URI to match up and find the operation ID. Which means if that verb isn't head, we have no way to identify. Like, we know it's head because in our test, we made the URL include the word head.
Yeah.
But the verb, when it gets down here, is get.
Yeah, and
So we need.
I'm not even sure that the current behavior is correct if I were implementing a proxy, but I don't remember whether we had a discussion. Like, I mean, it's been 5 years now, probably since the last time we really touched this. I don't remember us saying that we weren't going to support head-on proxy, and it's kind of a weird thing to do. Now, the risk would be, you know, it's up to proxies to decide how they want to handle head. So it's possible here that we followed or got some Go logic and then just didn't even think about it. If you put a proxy in front of the Cube API server, you might actually already get head stripped out where it would do a get to the back end and then skip the body. We don't use the proxy verb. Like, so there is a proxy, or technically connect is a proxy verb in HTTP. We're not doing any of that clever stuff. We're just passing it through. This is an API server. I feel like this is an API server bug that actually we need to make a decision about whether this is a bug or not.
Yeah.
Man, the terrifying things we find when you actually use our API.
When I was trying to do the tests, options doesn't even turn up in the logs at all.
And I would expect options to work for proxy. And there are some implications where it's possible that there's other code intercepting options before it gets to the API server. But I do feel like I don't remember we had a discussion on how many verbs we would support through the proxy. And I think we chose the known set. And then it got refactored a couple of times, and it does not surprise me at all that, now, the reason why head is turned to verb get from an RBAC perspective was deliberate, but it's probably not deliberate from the proxy perspective.
Sounds like we might have a conditional on if it's a verb, and we have this special verb handling area here, but I don't think it's working as in the way that we're expecting it to, because there's a little bit of a confusion between the current parts inside the URL and the HTTP verb matching to the concept of a Kubernetes, HTTP request.
Request info is supposed to get used by things that aren't in the HTTP processing flow. Like, the point of request info is to stop looking at the HTTP request and deal with an idealized version of it for specific Cube APIs behind it. There's a bunch of assumptions here that I think proxy is actually interfacing with, and I bet you custom aggregated API servers might actually have this issue as well. But yeah, I think it's just at some point we conflated two things on the back end. So this really does feel like request info is in the Cube model. There's no such thing as a head, but in a proxy scenario, absolutely go back especially use the Cube model. And so the transfer from request info back to HTTP is not correct.
Doesn't make sense for APIs other than proxy, and that means there's likely a bug here that we need to file. Is that our AI assumption? We go back and listen closer to.
I think API server is probably going to need to make a determination about whether someone's got to do a proxy and whether this was an intentional change or accidental. Obviously, a change at this point has security implications. Huge security implications. But
who should we collaborate with on the creation of this ticket, and who should own it?
I can, if you at me on it. Well, Slack. I don't see email notifications anymore. I can definitely add context on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Relate what I
We'll do. Go ahead.
I will relate what I can remember.
Thank you. Okay. Create a ticket and CC. There you go. Thank you. Thank you for that. And now we're actually getting down to our PR review stuff. So this is the priority class lifecycle test, and I'll also pull up its test grid. So let me close our other items we've gone over today and look at our priority class lifecycle test. This has merged, which is great. And I think there was a few, let's go down to the very bottom. So this will be a conformance test in a week. So I think we already kind of mentioned that. So we're looking forward to that merging. We don't need to review that at this point. This is our proxy for pod and service. It's 12 points. It's one of our larger tests that we hope everyone is happy with. If we go down to the bottom on this currently, we are just on a technical level, we just need an approve. The last comment that we got, we had Amici, he's been interwoven through a lot of this writing, and he is LGTM'd on that. We just got a review from Luciano, a few comments on the test itself, but was wondering why we're not using an existing test, or maybe why we're not picking it up. And we can look at that really quickly to say we've got this, should proxy a service and a pod, and they expose a few ports here. Stephen, I think you had mentioned that in the difference between your test and what he was mentioning. Do you want to bring that to mind again?
It's the fact that at the end of his comment, he was talking about patching and deleting, where the image we're using is just a straight echo server.
Right.
So that's not actually possible from what I can see. But there is the comment from Aaron at the top there around confirming what the request that's going through is actually the right request, but then the current porter doesn't seem to have a way to give that as a feedback. So I've just added some code in there of my basic rough test that I did earlier on all these explorations with Proxy, where I'm just echoing back the response method that was received by the porter, by the container back to the client.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a valid option for updating porter so that we can have this extra check that Aaron's raised?
I will drop that into case conformance as well, and also into our Zoom chat.
So you're saying that the image, the pod you're proxying to doesn't return enough data for you to verify that the proxy didn't alter the HTTP method on the way back, on the way to the pod? Is that what the issue is?
Yeah, from what I can understand of the Porter app inside of Agnostic Host, it's just gives a straight string return, which I have actually added to the test. But
yeah, you just have to add a new command to that image. The agnostic image, you just have to go add a new command to it that spits out all the details of the request, including the verb and everything, in JSON or something. Or just add a flag to the existing echo command that gives you detailed JSON response.
Yeah.
So,
And then you can complete that. That would be a useful useful thing, I would think.
I'm going to go ahead and add that to our notes. How do we add this right here?
Yeah.
During the conformance project meeting at John Mark suggested that we update AG and opposed to support the above. Going to be more specific on that, or is that?
It would be for the Porter app inside.
Well,
inside
there's a bunch of things. I don't know if you looked at all the different commands that are there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There's a bunch of commands available. So see if any of them do it, and if not, you can add one or add a flag to it that does it.
All right, that is great feedback, and we'll push this test out a little further. I want to note that I feel like any points we get this release are hard earned. And I'm still hopeful that we'll get our 30. Is there anything else that anybody has thoughts on or wants? Oh, we've got a few more. Sorry. No, this is good. This is points. Yay. Promote. This is a test we wrote a while back, and it was flaky. And we have submitted through a promotion for it because Test Grid shows for the very longest time that it is super green. Yay! There's no reds all the way in the history right now. I did rerun these jobs just once, so you can look in the history of when we ran it. So this was the initial creation. I did run testful Kubernetes once. I ran conformance parallel once, and both of the image tests, it's hard. I'm unsure what that job does, but it only took 2 to make it try again, and so we've assigned it here.
This is one I remember we actually merged at one point, didn't we? And we had to revert it.
It is merged. This is just the promotion.
Right. I thought we promoted it at one point, and we had to whatever.
I think we promoted it, and because there were infrastructure problems at the time, the signal, like, it was flaky, to be honest, right? And so we just said, oh, so much work, it's not going to promote. It's just, hopefully the infrastructure over time will be able to handle this kind of test. And it looks like the infrastructure has done so. And now we've got nice, clean, non-flaky tests, and it's been written for conformance. Let's get our 7 points. I'll drop that one into our chat and also into here, into our channel. Definitely would appreciate anybody who has the permission and privilege to push that one through. Any questions on that one? Beautiful. I will go ahead and close all of our not our notes. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. We were going down to the next of the reviews on the important issues. That was our promotion, which looks good. Here's a +4 endpoint for create and pod status. This one was back from July. And let's see what we are on the end right now. We have an approval. We just need an LGTM. This is because Aaron was concerned that while it is less flaky now, are we pushing too hard just to, I think, because I've seen a lot of errors on kind IPv6 that are not specific to us, which is why that tends to get run a bit. This is one of those flaky tests that we're having trouble debugging to understand how to get it across the line. So if there's debugging help, or if you think we're far enough along, then go ahead.
Is there a way you can bring up the test grid for that one?
Yeah, thanks. So we'll go to, for the whole PR, right? So, where is it?
Oh, they've all disappeared.
Is it down here?
It's
PR history.
PR history because it's not merged yet, so there's no test grid.
So this is our PR history for it right now, and you can see. Go ahead.
If you zoom out a little bit to see the number of runs, I think just time-wise, there's been a lot of stuff that has come through green since all the CI cleaned up a lot about 2 months ago. That's actually quite green. So a lot of the historical flakiness are like from like July, roughly.
Yeah.
And I've tried to do as much checking offline, but I just can't replicate the bug, or I should say the flake.
Looking currently, I think the most recent things are still on kind IPv6. How old is this one? Go ahead.
But if those ones that have just come in like 2 columns back that are like red, all of those I've gone through and I've noted back in the ticket that they were relating to totally independent tests that had nothing to do with
ours.
this.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make a concerted effort to track down what had caused those most recent issues. So if you scroll up just a fraction more, there's like the which images were causing issues. An image couldn't actually be pulled properly. So
I think his comment was probably around running these 3.
Yeah.
I guess that what it would nice to have feedback from the conformance group as a team, since we're here together. Do we need to go through and specifically address the Liget's things here before? What we had is we merged this, then we got to revert, and it was flaking.
I mean, I would have to go back and read it. This may be the one I was thinking of that weren't merged and then had to be reverted, but I would have to look at it in detail. I can't answer on the spot.
If you wouldn't mind taking that as an offline one, then I would love to have, and if you need a pair on it, we'll definitely jump in there and do it with you as well.
Okay. Can we wait till Friday?
Oh yeah, we're not in a rush. I guess it's been sitting there for months. We're just trying to.
I guess we've got to November. You know, I can get to Friday. We have the.
At some point this month. Don't stress. And then the next one is this update create apps lifecycle deployment.
It's in the same boat roughly.
Same boat. All right. Go ahead and close all of those extra tabs and go back to just, this is our last agenda item, folks. I know it's been a long meeting. Is this the right link?
That doesn't
ring true to me.
The plus
I got the link.
I think the link is wrong. Let's use the correct.
I made a copy paste error on the link, so I'll just fix the link.
That's all right.
But it will be in the same boat.
It's 93458.
This is back in July, and we're running similar tests. and this was Kubernetes verify was taking a long time, feels like infrastructure related. And we can look at the, again, go through and look at the details. And oops, that's not what I wanted. Details on a job. And then we can look at the PR history for the whole thing. Kubernetes verify took a long time. Doesn't feel like a Flake thing to me. And the only other one that I see that's sad is the GC Ubuntu Container D. And I remember that one being fascinating. It should grab from the scheduler. It doesn't look related, but this would be the other one that if we can have someone kind of, is it flaky or not now? So these last two are they flaky anymore? And if we do consider them flaky, can we get a bit of help debugging them? And we've, by the way, listened to all of the SIG architecture, SIG testing, how to debug flaky test stuff as well. And we're still not getting very far. My feeling is that it doesn't look that flaky to me. I think that if we merged it, it would keep, it wouldn't add any more instability. Any takers on that one?
I mean, I can take a look at it, but it's going to be a while.
Yeah, no, we'll just set them in the backlog there. They are there. When we can get to them, we will, as long as we know.
Maybe till after Wednesday of next week. So I have a bunch of stuff going on.
Awesome. Thank you for your help on that. And that concludes our meeting with 6 minutes to go, unless anybody has any other thoughts. We do have our, we're recording our conformance testing, our conformance KubeCon video this week. And I'm not sure if it's, I feel like I should be able to share it with our group beforehand, maybe get some feedback. The other thing is we have our roll up, and I just wanted to ask if it was okay to present that small markdown and presentation in SIG architecture in 2 days time as a
Sure, let me look at that.
And if there's anything else important, we want to make sure that SIG architecture is aware of from our meetings.
Currently, we have only one thing on the agenda, so I can put I put you on.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you everyone for showing up. We couldn't do this. This is definitely it takes a village. And I thank you for everyone for showing up and doing their part. Enjoy your week, and we'll see you in a few.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.